Let's talk today about Kelo versus City of New London. If you remember, in the Kelo case, the City of New London had decided that it was going to acquire a large parcel of land in downtown New London for urban redevelopment. But it had to acquire this land from a large number of landowners who didn't want to part with it, who wanted to keep the land for single-family homes and other purposes. So what did the City of New London do, since it couldn't very well acquire the land on the market? What it did is use the eminent domain power to acquire the land. And when it did so, the landowners brought suit challenging the constitutionality of the city's action. The case ultimately reached the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld the city's right to use the eminent domain power in these circumstances. Now, let's consider the problem in the Kelo case, and let's consider the contention made by the landowners. But in order to do that, we first ought to understand why it is that any municipality would ever have the right to exercise the eminent domain power to acquire land rather than buying that land on the market the way any ordinary landowner would. And in order to understand that, we probably should consider the quintessential exercise of the eminent domain power, the exercise of that power to build roads and railroads. Let's suppose that a municipality or another government entity wanted to build a road from town A to town B. Let's suppose these towns were 10 miles apart, and let's suppose that what the municipality had to do was acquire a large number of parcels from a variety of landowners in order to build a relatively straight road from town A to town B. And I have a big parcel in the middle, and the city now says to me, all right, Sterk, we'd like to buy your land. What's my response? Well, suppose I would have been happy to sell this land for $50,000 at any time up until I learned about the road. But now I know that if the city doesn't acquire my land, the city is going to have a road with a big kink in it, which is going to make it much less convenient for potential travelers, and which at the same time is going to make it much more expensive to build the road. Well, all of a sudden, my land, which was worth $50,000, is probably worth several times that amount. And who's going to pay that bill? Ultimately, the taxpayers. Without giving the city an eminent domain power, a power to acquire this land at market price, it's going to become very difficult for the city to build roads or railroads. The next question is, does this reason for having an eminent domain power extend to cases like the New London case? Consider what the city was trying to do. It wanted to acquire a large parcel of land for commercial redevelopment purposes, and it intended to acquire this land in order to make it attractive for potential developers to build. Well, if Mrs. Kelo had her single-family house in the middle of this area, the land wouldn't be attractive for that commercial development, and the city wouldn't be able to realize the increase in tax revenues, wouldn't be able to realize the increase in employment opportunities that the city was trying to get. So the same reasons that apply when we're dealing with roads and railroads would also apply when we're dealing with commercial development. So what do we do about this outcry about exercise of the eminent domain power? The alternative that the Supreme Court ultimately did take is to say that the protection against abuse by municipalities in a democratic society is a protection at the ballot box. That is, voters can vote out of office people who are in municipal positions who abuse the eminent domain power, or, as has happened already since Kelo, voters can go to state legislatures and ask those state legislatures to try to restrict the purposes for which the eminent domain power can be used. And that ultimately is the position the Supreme Court took for resolving the controversy in the Kelo case.